Alright, well, I didn't ask for the profanity. Who has a 100-word summary of all the trouble you guys got up into last week?
Kobold disenfranchisement just the entire way through.
That's every.
We, looking at the tabletop simulator.
Red created the most important and well-explained plan that involved Birdie somehow being misconstrued as our minion. And it will
Yeah,
be
can we get a lie
explained
rundown?
very thoroughly.
I enjoyed pretending to be like a CR 1/2 Kobold the entire time. It was
It's
fun.
very charitable.
I mean, Birdie's at least, like, let's be honest, he's like at least CR4, right? Right?
I mean, I think the tentacles alone put you at a 5.
How much
Yeah.
planning does Birdie have? It's like a Batman situation.
Yeah.
Except he can only make one type of plan.
So we went into this village.
Yes. Where people are named for the colors that have been burned
We
into
met
their
a bear.
faces.
We
We
met a bear.
bears. Raazu got to ride one for a little while.
We
And-
traipsed through the Ice King's domain.
Got attacked by big worms.
Yeah.
Big
Mm.
fireworms.
Yeah,
We
big
saved
fireworms.
this village from the worms.
Said big fireworms.
And the house and the building where this orc lady's forge has been completely decimated.
By fire, which is ironic.
Somehow this is probably all our fault.
Well, no, it got
The-
crushed somehow. Like it wasn't like burned down. It was like the Remoraz tried to climb up on top of it to get at Adrex, and it wasn't. The building wasn't built to code or whatever.
And this particular forge master's name was in my mind. Was taking the Iron Men and reforging their metal into weapons and giving them tribute to the Ice King.
She called
In
herself
exchange
Lady
for-
Elaine.
Thank you, Lady Elaine, in exchange for not being bothered.
So, whose fault is it that the forge collapsed?
The giant centipede flame monster.
Definitely a giant centipede flame monster.
But why did he
Absolutely.
climb up there?
Because that's what giant centipede flame monsters do.
I feel like there was another reason that the giant centipede monster climbed up there.
don't
Adrex
remember that.
only started perching on it when the giant flaming centipede monster went after him.
So Adrex was up on the roof of the forge.
That is
Yeah.
debatable.
I'm gonna call.
I
this
never
one
saw
Ad-
that happen.
I'm gonna call this one Adrex's fault. We're talking.
It is absolutely not Adrex's fault. And while Adrex will probably be conciliatory, Matt the player will die on this hill.
Well, and then a Remoraz will climb up onto the hill and it'll collapse.
Probably.
You guys have managed to fight off the Remorazes with
Yes.
no casualties. I think some of the colored men sustained some wounds, but none of them were killed in the attack.
They're mostly burned from stabbing the Renzermaws.
You guys did a really good job of locking these Remorazes down, guiding them where you wanted them to go. White was trying to escape the field of battle and was tackled by and held to the ground by Red.
Yeah, we wanted
Yeah.
to see if we could intervene on that.
So right now, in the immediate aftermath of the battle, I mean, the smell of charred giant insect is starting to waft up out of the forge, and you hear the cracks of this thing's carapace breaking under the heat. And a cloud of very dark gray smoke is starting to plume up out of the forge. Raazu and Birdie, the place where you're standing is getting much, much hotter than it was a moment ago because a giant Remoraz, which contains enormous amounts of body heat, enough to scald anybody who attacks it, just fell into this forge of magical fire.
Raazu calls out and says, "If you're wounded, I can help treat your wounds."
Well, I'm just grabbing our mounts and taking them back to the sledge.
Okay, so you're going to take the elks back over to the sledge and rein them back up?
Right.
Yeah, Raazu's
Okay.
going to attempt to perform triage on anybody who needs it.
Outside of some minor burns, from especially the front line here, who is fighting this Remoraz along with Windy, I don't think there were any major wounds. Gray was attacked once. And make a persuasion check.
Why is the bear is glued to me?
Okay, well, this is your life now.
I have a bear glued to me now. Persuasion, you said?
Yes.
If you glue a bear to you, you have to take a level in Cavalier.
Okay. I'm gonna blitz that because that was only a 8. There we go. That's a 17.
Okay. You offered to treat Gray's wounds. He was one that had gotten bitten during the fight. And he regards you very suspiciously. But seeing the field of battle, and once he sees that all of the men are accounted for, that there aren't any casualties, that there's actually very little in the way of destruction, considerably, he trusts you enough to allow you to tend his wounds.
He gains 10 hit points.
Let's go ahead and unlock this stupid bear. I don't know why it's... Here, let me do this. There.
Yay! Now Raazu is locked, I think. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I don't know why that happened. That was funny. Lady Elaine doesn't do much to check up on her menfolk, other than kind of look around for a moment. When she sees... when she sees Black, she summons him over. And why can't I pick up any of these guys? There we go. All these things are...
Like complicated.
This other bear is also kind of fucky. There we go. Black dismounts his bear. And he and the Lady Elaine go into her hut. And as she goes, she sheds off her armor. She throws her weapons to the ground. Her helmet, throws aside her shield. Just strewn into the snow. And a light dusting of snow does begin to fall. The only other immediate thing happening here is a couple of the men, we'll say the two greens, are going over, and at this point they have disarmed White and have begun to restrain him. One of them is dragging up a wooden pole from the bear pen, laying it flat out along the ground, and are lashing it to him with his hands behind the pole. And the air is just filled with the sounds of his protestations. He is insisting over and over through choked gasps that he was not planning to desert. But no man saw him fight at any point during the attack. And that's the scene right now. You guys can roleplay if you want.
What?
Just so we're clear, you're going to murder him, right?
Who are you asking?
The two greens and who else is over there? Red? A red?
Red, yeah. They're actually not doing this right outside of her hut. They're probably doing this closer over here.
And then Adrex will ask Red.
Ask Red.
Wait, me red or
Red tells you that White has proven himself to be a deserter and a coward. That he's going to die and the rest of them will feast.
You really think that's such a good idea, though? I mean, how many of your number are in this village?
He says one less after the White. And then he rethinks it and looks at the two greens and says, no, we have two greens. Maybe one of you can be the new White.
Oh. Logic. Adrex's cursed foe.
What is everyone else doing? Red, Raazu, and or Red and Windy rather.
Raazu was tending to Gray's wounds. Is there? I believe Lux is up here as well. Is that?
They have some light scalding. Nothing that traditional healing can't take care of. A little bit of bandaging.
Who was? Red was near White. Our Red was near White during the fight, right?
Red was all over the place. He was firing, like he got grappled by a Remoraz like way back here, and he made his way all the way across the field during the fight, firing arrows.
Then I'll head over to our Red, and I'll just whisper to him. I didn't see it. Was he running?
Yeah, probably. I don't think you should eat someone who runs.
Adrex, you saw it most clearly because you were right here in center field, and White was right beneath you. He has a spear, and while
he dropped the spear, didn't he?
He dropped the spear and ran. He never attacked the creature.
The dropping of the spear is the bigger telltale sign, I think. But White is, and if I'm remembering correctly, White is like, he's not a kid, but he's not like a full-on orc adult, right?
He's an untested orc. He's an unblooded orc. He's probably never seen actual combat before. Make a... You've lived in the South long enough and had a lot of interactions with orcs. Make a history check.
History? My history. It's terrible. All right. 6. Not knowing a whole lot about like the social structure of orcs, but you do know that combat is important to their number. So yeah,
I'll let you draw your own conclusion from that. But yeah, it's pretty unmistakable that he was fleeing. It's also not really clear that any of these men are looking for reasons to kill one another. That would be a very bad survival trait, and Lady Elaine probably would not stand for it.
Yeah.
So all they've done right now is they just lashed him to this pole, and they've got him laying face down in the snow here, with his arms and legs bound on the other side of the pole. And it looks like they're just going to leave him here until Lady Elaine comes out and gives the order, gives her judgment. But they also seem to, especially Red, who's been here longer than the other two, Red seems to know exactly what's going to happen. This will be seen as betraying the lady, and meat is scarce enough in this area. So they rid themselves of a weak member, and they all get a full belly. That's how he's looking at this.
I'm going to go over to examine the Remoraz.
And there are a few of these Remoraz corpses around. Which one are you going to examine? Well, you can't examine the one that fell in the forge. And there's one that's laying... One that you killed is still in the area. And the other one was felled... Was it down here you felled it? And collapsed against this wall, as I remember? Because the one that came in here got kited all the way around the forge, and then Adrex killed it.
I'll go examine the one that I killed.
Okay.
And I'm essentially just going to... Can I make... Would it be a cooking tools or an herbalism kit check to see if it was poisonous? Is there a way to cook this thing rather than have them eat White, is what's going through Wendy's mind.
Make an insight check. Actually, don't, because you've seen how they store their food. You've been near their kitchens. If there's edible meat on these creatures, they'll just store it and have larger rations for a while. They're not going to waste any amount of meat. It wouldn't be worth it to them. So like having these dead creatures, even if they are edible, which you're not sure of yet, isn't going to save White from that angle. It would take a little while for you to... I will let you make a intelligence cooking tools, or...
Yeah.
You know, actually, let's call it wisdom cooking tools or wisdom medicine to determine if this creature is edible.
Alright. That's a 22.
You think Adrex and probably Birdie could safely stomach this creature's meat because of their kind of innate draconic constitution. The rest of you would find it way too difficult to eat and possibly unhealthy. It's just a vile, wretched creature.
Does he even know how to, and this is Adrex asking Red, does he even know how to wield a spear? Has he ever been taught how?
I don't know. I didn't see him using it.
Sorry, I meant...
Not you.
I'm going to do this in every campaign from now on.
Gonna get one NPC that's named the exact same thing as one of the player characters.
So are you following Red and Green as they are moving away now?
Oh, if they're moving away, then Adrex will just ask White directly. I assumed White was going to be under supervision until Lady Elaine made herself available.
How are you asking him? Like, what words are you using, and what are your mannerisms as you talk to him?
Adrex being Adrex, it would just be flat out direct. Have you ever been taught to wield a spear? And Adrex is looking at him with like a bit of pity, but also with a glint of, we've rescued people like you before.
Make an insight.
I need you to work with me.
Make an insight check.
All right. That is 12.
12. He's not able to look at you as you're talking to him, but he turns his head as best as he can, and he rests his shoulders in one direction and tries to kind of gaze up at you out of the side of one of his eyes. And he pleads with you, and he insists that he was kidnapped from his tribe by Lady Elaine, that he didn't want to be part of her army, that they thrust a spear into his hand, and no, he's never received any martial training. But he's blubbering a lot, and he's stammering a lot. And you can tell that first of all, that's probably not true, just given what you know of orcs. A man of even though he's young, a man of this age would have received some training. But also, he'll say anything, absolutely anything, to get you to cut his ropes. Yeah, he's insisting that no, he's never received any training whatsoever. Also, you have considerable martial training yourself. The whole point of a spear is you don't require a great deal of training. It has a pointy end. It's over there. You poke the thing. Armies are fielded with men have received no martial training that are armed with spears and shields. It's kind of the point of the weapon.
Not good armies, mind it.
Probably less common north of the wall, but like you could whip up a goblinoid rabble by giving them all spears, and they could defend a location long enough for reinforcements or supplies to arrive, that kind of thing. They wouldn't stand against mounted knights or against skilled adventurers like you guys, but spear's not the most complicated weapon in the world. You're pretty sure he's lying about his training. That's not why he cut and ran.
Listen to me. I'm probably the only person who's on your side right now, but if you're going to lie to me, can't help you.
And he insists,
so I need you to be
that he's not lying. And he begins to beg you to cut his bonds, his binds. And he keeps glancing up at this exit, which is partially caved in, like it would take some work to excavate, but he keeps glancing over, like if you cut his binds, he's going to take his chances.
Look, man, I don't think you're listening to me. I'm the only person between you and Lady Elaine right now, all right? And I might lose that. Like, I might lose... I might not be able to stand up for you. She might not listen to me. In fact, she's probably pissed at me. We won't get into that. What I need you to do is I need you to be straight with me, all right? You lying to me isn't going to help the situation. You looking at the exit and cutting and running isn't going to help the situation, all right?
When you talk about where he's looking, he plants his forehead on the ground and stops glancing around. But he continues to insist that he's not lying. He's not a fighter. He didn't know what to do. He's no good fighting against monsters. He would have been killed. He didn't ask to be taken into Lady Elaine's harem.
Adrex raises his hand like, yeah. All right, listen, take a deep breath. Count to 10. All right.
Make a make an intimidation check.
Okay. Adrex might not be bad at it. That is a 15.
And he begins counting to 10 in
50.
Orcish.
Excellent. Good. Now, and Adrex actually starts speaking in Orcish to him.
Okay. Around this time, now that some wounds have been tended to and things are calming down a little bit, some of the men are investigating the 2 corpses, and some of them are starting to clear the rubble away from the top of the forge at this point.
Listen to me. I know you're an orc. I know you've received some training, and they've handed you a spear for the explicit purpose of stabbing things. So regardless of your skill level, they expected you to do something. Whether or not you're any good at it, and whether or not you were scared, that's another thing. I can work on those things, but I need you to be honest with me.
At this point,
I've
Raazu would be walking toward what would be approaching.
Raazu, as you walk up, Adrex is saying this to this orc. Well, you can't. You don't understand Orcish, do you?
No, I don't understand.
Then he's speaking in Orcish, and the orc's on the ground, counting.
I've trained lesser people to be better fighters. You would be much easier, but I need to know all of the details, and I need to know that you're going to work with me here.
Very important at this moment, because Birdie is in eye shot of White. Is Birdie over there overhearing this conversation, giving a jerk-off motion?
No.
Okay.
I'm taking care of the elk.
Okay.
Raazu speaks to Adrex. Are they putting him to death?
Oh, yeah. He threw down his spear and ran.
What would they have done in Raazu's squadron back in the day if one of the goblins had done that? What would that punishment be? If someone break ranks and tries to flee.
Oh, probably something similar. But we're not in a goblin host. We're something completely different. This is clearly not your run-of-the-mill orc band. This is something completely different. And also, Raazu is a different person than she was, a few years ago.
Adrex. White begins speaking again, very haltingly in Orcish, and very low. Like you have to stoop way down to hear what he's saying, for fear of being overheard, because the camp is mostly orcs as it is. He tells you that you have to help him escape. You have to. Because they're going to kill him. And if they don't kill him, she might take him back to her bed. Both of these things he would like to avoid at all costs.
What's he saying?
Adrex just shakes his head.
Adrex is not an expert on orcs, so he doesn't know whether that's a good thing or not.
Raazu sighs.
I mean, I think even Adrex can figure out what that means.
He continues
Would Raazu have
whispering.
been
He
able
says, cut my binds, slip me the knife. I'll make it on my own. I'll go right now. They won't follow me. They won't have time. They're all busy. Look behind you. They're all busy. And they all seem to be busy with clearing debris and these corpses. The only person between him and the exit is Birdie.
I don't know if I don't think he will be able to take Birdie.
I mean, we've already proved that I'm stronger
Yeah.
than he is.
I mean, yeah, that's what Thanks for explaining the joke there, buddy.
Adrex, low, apply, and what's your plan when you're just gonna survive out in the wild and the Ice King's done? You really think that a possibility?
And he starts stammering out something unintelligible. And he begins squirming again, and you can see he can't help but glance back up at the exit.
You fool. You poor fool.
What are Windy and Red up to at the moment?
I wanted to investigate where this pathway collapsed and see if it was just from the Renzermaw or from something else.
It just looks like the heat of the Remoraz caused the snowpack up on top of the ice flow to fall down in here. Just the heat of it is melting in enough to cause it in. It wouldn't take more than a couple minutes to clear. It's just snow.
Okay.
And I'm probably going to be over examining the where they're helping the removing the stone, just because my current thought is, well, it looks like Adrex is dealing with talking to White, so I better build up as much goodwill as we have before he does something dumb.
Okay.
Or I have to help him do something dumb, which I mean is pretty clear here.
Who's this up here? Oh, this is Rust. Rust can be down here dealing with this guy. The two greens and red and orange has come out to help as well. Starting to clear away debris just from the area. This was just a wooden structure. Remember, there's a deep hole in the earth. The forge is actually a couple of stories down. And Red turns to you as you approach and compliments you on a battle well fought. He said he would not have expected somebody of your sightlessness to have fought so well.
And Windy nods and says, I do my best to surprise people.
And he reaches out and he brushes past, like the back of his hand, across the feathers of one of your wings. He says, or someone of your frailty.
And at that, Windy laughs and says, haven't you found that it's not necessarily the largest opponent who wins? And Windy waves a hand over at the enormous dead creatures.
And they can't hear you guys can't hear what Adrex and Raazu were doing on them, but you can clearly see them over there with White. He glances back in their direction. He says, nonetheless, the largest of you also fought very well. I think Lady Elaine will be pleased.
And Windy nods again at that. Says, he's very good at that.
Orange, ever the jokester, says, bugger all that. Ask her to help clearing away this rubble.
Ask Raazu?
He's telling Red to ask you. He seems to be not quite as taken in by your charms, as it were.
Yeah. And Windy will step up and start lifting stuff away, and then just looking at because these are stone covered with snow, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a stone hill on which sits a sheet of ice, and above that a huge snowpack towering up about 60 feet.
And Windy will say, with the time that we have left here, I don't know that we could finish the work, but I could show you how to make a more sturdy forge out of stone.
Who are you saying this to, Orange or Red?
I'm going to say this to Red.
Red tells you that would be a conversation to have with the lady, but he warns you that she doesn't like advice.
I mean, who does, really?
That's good to know.
Red, are you helping Gray clear away the carcass? All he's doing right now is kind of dragging it back to this area so it's out of the way so they can clear the snowpack.
Yeah.
Okay. And Gray speaks very little. You've not heard Gray say very much. You saw a brief interaction between him and Raazu, where he allowed her to tend his wounds. So he doesn't say anything, as you said, about the work. How do you wear your knives? You just have them on a bandolier, all over your boots?
Red has a bandolier, which contains... Hold on, let me see. So there's a bandolier with 4 daggers, He has 2 hidden in his boots. He has 3 on his belt, and he has kind of like a sword belt kind of deal with 2 more. And I think that covers all of them.
As you guys are dragging parts of the carcass away from the area, he stoops down near the thing's underbelly, where a couple pieces of this chitinous mass come together around a small hole from which has been ejected some manner of caustic fluid. And he waves you over.
Come over.
And he tells you that if you cleanse the area around this circle, and he holds out his hand, he says, inside there is a hard, flat scale like a bone that you grind up, place in your pipe. And then he motions, he says, I will share with you and yours.
Sure, I'll pull out a Dragonbone dagger and see if I can't get that loose.
And you do, after a moment, and it's hot, very hot to the touch.
That's why I'm using the cold magic dagger.
And it's just about big enough to fit in the palm of your hand, but it feels very hot and very chalky, like it would be very easy to crush up.
Do I think there's any possibility of using this to make some sort of any of the body fluids or anything to make a reactive poison that would cause fire damage?
Make an Arcana check.
Six.
You know enough to know that you don't know the answer to that,
Okay.
but Birdie or Adrex might.
Okay.
And eventually, the work goes down south here, so they can get this guy out of the way. All of this snowpack here has melted away where it was thinnest, and that's where they're dragging the second carcass in pieces and piling it up. Where did Blue get off to? Blue is putting the bearers back in their pens. So what are you guys all doing for about the next hour or so after the work is starting to quiet down a little bit?
Adrex, do you bring Raazu up to the up to speed on the conversation you had with White?
Yeah. Adrex
Raazu-
says no. Need.
Raazu will
Enough.
frown as she hears these details, and then she says, if that's the case, then the Lady Elaine failed this man by not giving him the training he needed to survive. If she claimed him, she nods to the mark on the side of his face. If she claimed him, then it's on her to ensure that he is prepared for the dangers that this place represents.
I don't know if I would phrase it quite like that, but you're not wrong.
Then it's up to us to put it in a more palatable form.
That I agree with.
Birdie, are you doing anything after you get the elks calmed back down? No?
Apparently not.
Just watching Adrex over here.
Okay.
Just trying to look inconspicuous to maintain the cunning ruse.
After about an hour or so, Lady Elaine in black emerged back out from her hut. And Elaine sees that basically all of her men, at this point, Brown will be working, as well as Rust and Gray, to clear this, and also Windy, to clear the forge. She sees the work that's already been started, but she shouts out that if it's not clear by sundown, there will be 10 lashes for all of them. Then she looks around to see which of you guys are in the area. Red, are you hanging out up here dissecting this corpse? I'm trying.
Red's staying up here.
Okay, so Lady Elaine can't see you right now. But she points at Adrex, Raazu, and Windy. Says, "You three, come in here." She glances back over. "Bring a driver."
I'll go
Adrex
grab
whistles for-
Birdie.
Adrex whistles for Birdie.
Okay.
That Birdie whistle.
And as you close in on the hut, she asks you if your knife fighter had fallen, the one with the smooth nose.
No,
No,
he's
he's-
about somewhere.
Oh, Arred. No, he's around. Okay.
I mean, I guess she would have cause to remember Red's name. She would not use it,
Adrex
though, in
whistles
this case.
for Arred. And in fact, Adrex addresses him as Arred.
Our red.
Do you think there's anything you could do with liquids inside those things, Adrix, to make like a fire? I mean, you could on a weapon to make it leap into flame, like they did.
You'd have to examine the corpse to know for sure, Adrix, but there's plenty of corpse to examine.
Yeah, Adrix says that.
It's very
Not to muscle in on your thing or anything.
It's very cramped inside of Lady Elaine's hut. And there's nowhere really to sit. There's a very large pile of furs covering the floor. She has a straw mat in one side, much larger than the other mats that you've seen. Certainly larger than the one in White's hut. And she immediately cuts through any sort of nonsense. She tells you flat out that she thinks the Frost Giant set these Remoraz on her. Why he's taking his revenge now, after almost a full year of the trickery, the story that she told you last week. She doesn't know, but she suspects she might have a guess. She's speaking of Siakchar, the Frost Giant. She made a great axe for him many, many years ago, decades ago. Last year, Siakchar came back to commission a second, and she refused. He was trying to get an axe made for his new lover, also a Frost Giant. When she came around to kind of throw her weight around and stomp, Lady Elaine told her she needed to go find materials in Castle Voronoct in order to make a second axe. And when she went there, she was just setting a trap. She was trying to get her killed. And as far as she knows, that's what happened, because there's then the reports of a zombie Frost Giant in the area. Those dice were not meaningful. I'm just playing with my dice.
Sure.
Police story.
So therefore, what's your plans for Siakchar?
She says, first of all, she needs to acknowledge your strength and valor. She says, undoubtedly, 3 creatures of that size being sent against the camp. And we've suffered no deaths, in no small part to the efforts of you and yours. So she offers acknowledgement of your participation in the combat.
Raazu nods.
She says, make no mistake, between myself, Black, some of the other blooded warriors here, we could have taken these 3 creatures and destroyed them, but not without heavy losses. Siakchar sought to weaken me, weaken my position, increase the strength of his bargaining. He has not done this. That is thanks to you. She says that previously you had told her that you yourself were on a quest to Castle Voronoct, and that you wanted to avoid the Ice King's gaze as you traveled there.
Aye, we do.
At this point, she nods at Black, and Black stands up and leaves for a moment. She says that one of her men has made an excursion into the castle before, and lived. Came back out. Says that he may have knowledge of the keep that can help you dramatically.
Raazu nods. That would be very useful indeed.
She's willing to share this knowledge with you and aid you by telling you what paths to take to the castle to avoid the Ice King, and grant you assistance on your quest if you will agree to kill Siakchar. put an end to
Raazu
this
looks
threat once and for all.
Raazu looks to the others.
Who
Zombie fuck.
was it who heard about giants before?
I mean, you've all heard of giants.
No, I know,
Well-
but there was someone who, like, you were talking to, was talking to like a fairy about giants.
I think it was Adrex and Birdie that had a conversation with.
Adrex, have you heard anything about frost giants before?
I mean, you are from this region.
I'll let you make a history check if you want.
Here comes that 20.
They're big, they're frosty. They like axes, probably.
What's a giant? Adrix is too preoccupied thinking about white.
Yeah, I would assume so.
I can't. One.
When she doesn't get an immediate answer, she tells you. She shares with you her suspicion. She says the only thing she can think of that would cause Siakchar to be emboldened enough to make an attack of this nature is if he had a powerful ally in the region backing him up.
I think that might be the Frost King.
At that, she bolts out into laughter. And
Raazu
Adrix
freezes for a
grimaces.
second. Wait.
Adrix, even with your terrible history, you know that dragons and giants never, ever ally under any circumstances. These are ancient, hated races. The giants waged war against dragonkind for centuries. And Lady Elaine has a
Raazu.
good long guffaw at Raazu's ignorance.
While she's laughing, Raazu suddenly has a realization. Mammon. She snaps her fingers and says, "Mammon." Do you
At
know
that,
any
Lady
creatures-
Elaine's
creatures
eyes
that-
narrow, and she says, "How do you know of Mammon?"
We've had dealings with proxies and agents of his before. And Raazu will tell her the story of. Well, Raazu wasn't there for that. Raazu will turn to Wendy and say, "Can you tell them the story of the half dragon or the dragonborn hand axe and his dealings in the Kovnos?"
And Wendy will tell the story fairly matter-of-factly.
And as you're partway through the story, Rust enters into the hut, and he scarcely has room to step in and stand in the doorway.
Once Wendy tells the story, Raazu will say, "We're told that this creature or entity, I don't know what you want to call him, Mammon, has usurped the power of the lost Lord of Blades, his armies."
To that, Lady Elaine shakes her head and says, "The Lord of Blades is a story, a fairy tale. The far Southlings speak of him to scare children." She says, "I know many of these stories. Some of them rhyme. Would you like me to sing you one?"
Who do you then think is this man's ally? The frost giant.
She says that Mammon is real enough. She knows because she's had skirmishes with his agents. Never anything open, very little bloodshed on either side, but Mammon doesn't like the fact that she is kind of co-opting these metal men and melting them down. He's never overtly moved against her, that she knows, but she is using the remnants of this metal patrolman army, and she knows that there's some connection to Mammon there.
Seems like they would have a common interest in destroying you.
Can I make an insight check to see how confident she is that the frost giant's working with Mammon?
The way she's speaking, she seems absolutely confident, because she was immediately taken aback when Raazu spoke that name. And she seems like a woman that doesn't say something unless she's sure of it.
All right.
The only other thing that makes sense, and she explains this to you, she says the only other ally in the region would be the denizens of Vornocht Keep. And she's never known them to take an ally. She's never known them to ask for anything. And this is actually how she's been so good at repelling Mammon's advances over the years, is that anybody that arrives in her camp making her promises, she immediately kills. Because all of Mammon's promises are poisoned.
All right, then. And I'll look around at the others and I'll say, I'm for making this agreement, although I have a couple things that I would want in return.
She says she would hear your requests.
And I'll look around at the others to see if they're of like mind, that this seems like an okay idea.
Raazu says, your terms, Wendy?
Well, one thing I would want with regards to the area, our only member who's been in this area at all left years and years ago and doesn't know any of the changes. So I would want one of your men in order to show us the way.
At that, Rust speaks up. He says he can guide you pretty much anywhere you need to go in the region. He knows ways to keep out of the Ice King's gaze. This is how he and his men are able to slip out and hunt down metal men and bring them back without the Ice King being able to keep track of them. Just easier that way for them. Less hassle.
Also, our driver has proven himself more effective doing, well, let's be honest about it, more useful work, fighting and such. We'd want someone to take care of the grunt work.
Make a deception check.
Mm-hmm.
Can I aid another on this?
How are you aiding her?
Oh, I'll walk over to... With the mention of that, Red Alert looked like he just remembered something. Walk over to Birdie and take his Dragonbone dagger back. Oh, I'm glad you didn't stab yourself this time.
What was your deception, Wendy?
That was a 16.
A 16? Lady Elaine gives a smirk. She doesn't say anything, and she says, what you do with... She doesn't say anything outright. But she gives indications that she's in on the joke at this point. She says what you do with your driver is your own affair.
Well, I'd like someone to do the heavy lifting and such that he's no longer going to be any good for. But I wouldn't want it to be someone that you had much of a use for. And I'll look out at the others and I'll say, what was that one's name? White? He seemed useless enough. Would you be willing to give him up?
Lady Elaine leans back. She says that she has use for all her men. If any of them prove themselves useless, then by definition she has no more use for them. She says she'll send Rust with you as a guide. He can drive your sledge. He can lift whatever you ask him to lift. White would be of no use to you. She didn't see it personally, but she's now heard that he attempted to escape during the fight instead of staying to fight the monsters.
How long has White been here?
I actually have an answer to that question. White hasn't yet seen a full winter at the camp, so less than a year.
Why did you take him in the first place?
And she tells you, she explains, because the old White died and needed replacing.
So you would just take in somebody from the wastes, vetting him or training him?
And she bristles at the comment. She says, say it plainly. What do you mean?
I mean, what training have you given this man to make sure he's prepared for the dangers that exist here?
And she calls out in a loud, booming voice, Black! And after a few moments, Black appears in the doorway, Rust steps out so that he can make himself known. She says, explain to the Hobgoblin the vigorous drills and training that you put these men through. And Black kind of stands too. Kind of goes into... he's a bear man. He's enormous. So it looks a little comical, but he kind of squares off his chest, puts his shoulders back as though he takes great pride in explaining the drills that he runs. That it's very rare for men to come here completely unblooded. It's just difficult to get through the wastes. Yeah, he outlines military training that they undergo. Lady Elaine does not allow many men to live here, and the men that do live here, she insists on being useful, strong, knowing how to work, knowing how to fight. And it becomes very clear that, yeah, no, White was just lying when he says he has no training. He had some training as a boy in an orc camp, and he also receives drilling here as well. And this is Black's job. One of Black's jobs.
Once it's been made clear that's what's going on, Adrex just lets out a very loud sigh, rubs his head.
And when Black is done, Lady Elaine ushers him away. And Rust takes his place again in the doorway. And then Lady Elaine turns to Raazu and asks, so, what use do you have for a man who won't work, won't fight, but sure does eat? A stomach with no value is a liability.
And Adrex can't contain himself at this point and just blurts out, everybody has a use. You just have to try and find it.
Birdie whispers in Draconic, the use they have for him is food.
You said that in Draconic?
Yeah.
And Lady Elaine speaks very good Draconic.
Everyone here speaks very good Draconic.
Wendy doesn't speak Draconic.
She doesn't speak Draconic to Birdie in turn. But you said you kind of mumbled it?
Yeah.
She leans forward as though she didn't hear you and says, the driver has an opinion. He will voice it then, and we will hear it.
Raazu looks to Birdie, nods.
Birdie says, he just kind of, he's like sheepish now.
He gets out a shovel and starts digging a hole under her.
He just hides behind like either Adrex or Raazu, whoever's closest and the tallest at that particular moment.
And she sits back up. She says, you are Southlings. You would not understand the harshness where we live. I understand that you don't approve of how we dispose of our dead, but it is a necessity. Men are meat.
Oh.
Meat is scarce enough.
It doesn't offend me any. But we were speaking of what you wanted in this agreement, and then we were speaking of what I wanted in this agreement.
She nods. This is very well. But a quantity of good meat, that much by weight, I would have to see recompense. I will give you White in exchange for one of your elk.
I'll look back over at the group. You guys think White can pull the sleigh?
Birdie's shaking his head no.
To that, Lady Elaine laughs. Says, perhaps if you lash him to it, well,
Maybe,
you'll list in one
Birdie-
direction.
Wendy and Adrex are both very accomplished hunters. We could bring you back some amount of meat. We unfortunately need the elk.
She asks what you intend to hunt.
Birdie and Adrex are the ones who know what would be good to be hunted here.
Adrex, make a nature.
So Red just kind of looks at you guys like, "Oh, come on."
Adrex, make a nature check. Birdie, you don't get to make this check because you've never.
Or not
lived this
Birdie,
far
I said
north.
Wendy, sorry.
Oh, Wendy doesn't get to make it either because she's also never lived this far north.
No, I'm gonna blip because nature's actually one of my good. That's
There you
better.
go.
That's a 16.
16.
Yeah.
To hunt that much meat to replace a full-grown orc or an elk, for that matter. Typically, like a small tribe would send out hunters out into the area and bring back rabbits, birds, maybe fish if there's unfrozen streams nearby. You're not totally sure you could fulfill that promise. I'll leave it up to you whether you want to make the attempt or not. But Red might be promising something you can't deliver on.
I'd like to point out that the average elk weighs like several, like 400 or 500, 600 pounds.
Are you?
And
But how much
Or-
does White weigh? We don't need to replace the elk. We need to replace White.
I understand that, so I was like, if we end up giving the elk, like,
That'd be
That's like-
unbalanced too.
We should get like
Yeah.
both greens too.
So who's saying this to Lady Elaine? Birdie?
no, I was just pointing that out. I'm talking to Red.
Okay. Well, if you're talking to
Like-
Red, Lady Elaine can hear you because it's a 10-foot by 10-foot room. Everybody's squeezed
That-
in there.
That's fine. I just don't want to talk to the scary orc lady.
I can do it. Andrix says.
So nobody's pointing out, hey, White doesn't weigh as much as an elk.
I mean, I'm pointing it out just to Red. Be like,
I'll relay that. I'll
Okay.
point it out. I'll say.
She
Speaking
says,
of fairness,
that's true, but White has betrayed me once. If I allow him to live, though I'm sure you all are capable guardians, I open myself up to the danger of him coming back and doing some harm or evil to this camp. He may betray me again.
But he betrayed you explicitly by not being able to do harm or evil.
He says, she corrects you and says he betrayed me by being unwilling to fight. And then Adrex is saying, I'll do it. I'll do this hunting. You're agreeing to go out and hunt?
Mm-hmm.
Think how much easier it'll be with a bow.
If you hit a rabbit with this bow, my god.
It'll obliterate.
Meat explosion, I think is the term.
The arrow will go all the way through.
Oh, it's connected.
She leans back and you see her regard Adrex for a long time, like as though deep in thought. Oh, everybody just disconnected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was this
But we're still
tabletop?
here.
Okay, my internet's not dead. Good.
Yeah, it was Steam or
Tabletop
tabletop.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna
tabletop.
set up the next table here. Eventually, she leans forward again, Adrex,
Mm-hmm.
and she's all right. I'm inclined to accept this arrangement. If you can bring me an equivalent weight of meat, and she is not picky. Her and her people will eat just about anything. Equivalent to that of what you could get from butchering your elk. She will give you White to do with what you will. May he be your burden instead of hers. Make an insight check, Adrex.
Hold on, let me reconnect.
Yeah, I can't really.
I can roll for you.
Hold on. I'm right here. Eight.
Yeah, she agrees to your terms. She says bring back an amount of meat equivalent to what they could get from butchering this elk, and she will give you White. She will also send Rust along with you. She forbids him from going into Vornocht or from engaging Siakchar. She's not willing to put him in that danger if you all are available to do the work for her. But he is very knowledgeable of the area. He knows secret paths that other people don't. And he knows a great amount about Vornocht Keep itself. She is going to take a couple of days to make preparations on her end.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 3 days' time. By the third sunrise. It's going to take her that long, she figures, to clear away the debris of her forge. Fish the charred, burnt remains of the Remerez out of there. And that's your time limit, Adrex. That's how long you have.
All right.
To go hunting. So let's see if we can condense this. Well, first of all, are you planning to do anything clever? Are you planning to cheat her at all? Or do you have...
No.
Nothing stupid? Okay, we can probably just boil this down to a couple of rolls then. So first question is... Well, first let me roll for the weather for these 3 days. Because it's light snowfall right now. It's probably about mid-morning going on to early afternoon right now. So you have until the third sunrise from this point. So a little over 72 hours from right now.
All right.
So the first question is... Like, what's your pace? Are you going to spend this entire time out hunting? Because if you do that, you're going to come back extremely exhausted, whether or not you have anything. Like, how many hours a day do you plan to spend hunting? Of 72, let's say.
You need 8 for making sure
8
I'm
hours
not
of
exhausted,
rest.
right?
Yeah, you need 8 hours of rest a day to make sure that you start incurring levels of... Technically, what happens if you don't take a rest, you make a Constitution saving throw, and if you fail that throw, then you incur a level of exhaustion. It's possible that Adrex could work for 3 days straight without a rest and not be exhausted, but it gets more and more difficult after every day.
Right. The response to that would be dependent on how successful Adrex is the first 2 days. If Adrex starts getting desperate because this is important to him, he would go that third day without resting.
So your pace for the first day, then you're going to take 8-hour rest that first day.
Yeah.
If it's a good hunt, okay. Are you taking
Can
anybody
anyone
with
else aid Adrex? Okay.
you? Yeah, it's up to Adrex.
wondering.
Adrex can take whichever of you people he wants.
Well, let's.
Anybody he doesn't take is going to be here in the village. Can use those 3 days for downtime actions.
Adrex will let anyone help him because Adrex, but hopefully Windy or Birdie, whoever normally scouts for us, will come along.
I'll go. I mean, it's not like
Yeah, Wendy will come as well.
So Windy and Birdie are going to come with you, okay? Both
Again,
of
to
you
reiterate,
are.
though, this is not like exclusive. If you want to come along, you can.
I think somebody should stay back in the camp.
Yeah, Raazu will stay back, definitely.
Yeah, Red's not very good at the outdooring stuff.
remember, I did trap the sledge, so be careful opening it.
Yeah.
And just, I have the DC of that written down if somebody does open that.
You're going to have
Just a
to show Red how to avoid the trap things. I don't think he watched you set it. Okay.
Can I search their sledge for traps and then make a thieves' tool check?
Yeah, you want to disarm Birdie's trap? Kind of seems like a dick thing to do.
Well, no, I want to bypass it. I don't want to disarm it. I want to.
Birdie could just
up, but
explain how to avoid the trap. I'm assuming
Okay.
Birdie left some way for him to access the materials. Okay.
Yes, Birdie did. That is 100% a thing that I thought about.
That sounds like something Birdie would think of.
All right, so Red is going to stay back in the village, and Raazu is going to stay back in the village. So you two have 3 days of downtime actions you can take. Adrex,
Yes, sir.
let's get a... It would be a survival check at disadvantage, but you have 2 people assisting you as far as scouting, and also they're both accomplished archers. So, yeah, go ahead and make your survival check for day 1. DC is 10. I want to know how much you make it by.
That is 14, so 4.
4. So your first day of hunting was not wildly successful. Are we resting that day?
Yep.
Okay, so you're going to take a full rest. Nobody's going to be exhausted. So day 2, make that same check. Oh, wait. Okay, weather did not worsen. Go ahead and make that same check.
That is a 24, so 14.
14.
That was a good one.
Mm.
So at this point, you have managed to just lots of small game that Windy has. I guess you wouldn't skin it. I guess you could skin it if you wanted, but nowhere near the amount of meat that you need. Day 3 either needs to be extraordinarily successful, or you have to find much bigger game. One of those two things would need to happen. So are we sleeping on night 2?
No,
No, you're
not
gonna
Adrex.
hunt through the night. Okay. Go ahead and make another survival check. Make this one a disadvantage, because you've got more sources of disadvantage than advantage on this check.
All right.
And we'll see what you get throughout the nights. Same deal. DC 10. Just tell me how much you make it by.
Nope.
So yeah, you work through the whole night, but just absolutely fruitless. And day 3. Let's get that final check.
Still at disadvantage or regular?
Not at disadvantage. Oh, well, actually, everybody needs to make... All 3 of you need to make a Constitution saving throw. DC is only 10.
Adrex got.
I made it.
Okay. So none of you are
Oh, you
taking the
made it.
level of exhaustion, but just put down a mark that next time you make this check, it's going to be more difficult. Until you get long rests. And let's get that survival check for day 3. Oh, let me make sure...
Brick Road.
Never mind. Day
Before he
3,
makes
you
this check.
encounter a bear.
Oh,
If you manage to
Alright.
drag back this bear, that will more than enough.
I was about
Yeah.
to say.
Let's go murder a bear.
What was Raazu about to say?
Never mind. I forgot that I'm the paladin of a low tier shit god that wouldn't help Adrex out in this. So never mind.
Is there any reason we can't take a short rest if we're back at the camp?
You
Or
can
long
take,
rest?
take as many rests as you want back at camp.
Okay.
Yeah, we got 3 days of downtime.